those questions shouldn't come off allocation for opposition parties, although those sort of questions we'd ask.
What are we doing? Our job as an MP here.
Well, at least we like having questions that are being good questions to be asked.
Nice. Minister, there is an investment in rail in budget 2025 that looks at metro investment for rail for Auckland and for Wellington. But there's nothing for what is, the golden triangle as they call it, yet that is in the government's GPS on land transport. So what can we expect to see in terms of investment in the golden triangle, given that that's not, as I understand it, connected to the rail metro budget provisions that were announced?
Kiwi Rail is funded for the rest of the network through what is known as the Rail Network Improvement Project.
ANIP, yeah.
ANIP, that comes via NZTA through the National Land Transport Fund. However, let's call it the funding of that fund is through the Crown, and that fund has been voted and a decision's shortly to come from Minister Bishop on the exact value of that. At this stage, we will be able to show, once that's made, the split of investment. Money will always be going into the Golden Triangle. It is an important part of our, it is the most revenue earning part of our network at the present moment. But I will make the point that that's been the case for about 15 years. So things like bridges, which are really expensive, and we've rebuilt elements of the Kaimai Tunnel, we've already done the bridges, etc. So the big lumps of capital expenditure required for the rail maintenance in that area have actually been done. So relative to its earning, it is actually having a little less invested because it simply doesn't need as much. But we are funded for the rest of the network, confident that funding is sufficient to deliver what we wish to do.
So the GPS was basically signed off by the government last year. So you then saying that if the GPS does include the Golden Triangle as an area for improvement and targeted investment in rail, we would expect to see those decisions flow through the ANIP process,
yes,
rather than the budget that was announced.
Yes, it is in the ANIP, in the prioritisation of ANIP dollars.
And we look forward to
where it is being spent by geographic area, by risk, and also in certain areas by the quality of the asset.
Okay.
And the point I'm making about the Golden Triangle is that relative to the rest of the network, its asset quality is high.
Thank you. Minister, obviously the Hillside opening that you attended in open, and previous governments have been part of specific funding for that upgrade there. What plans do you have in the sense of inter-regional rail connectivity, particularly in the South Island, in terms of investment?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned Hillside and previous goals, but you didn't tell us the framework and the shape and the character of that previous government who made the commitment to fix it up in the first place.
So I said governments plural.
Success has many fathers, failures an orphan, and I can't believe how many fathers railways is getting now. But anyway, my colleagues can answer that second part of your question.
I'm not sure whether you're referring to freight interconnectivity or passenger.
A bit of both, actually. I mean, what we're looking for, I think, as a country is an upgrade to investment in rail. So are there plans around inter-regional connectivity, not just for freight, but passenger service?
Let's talk about the freight first. So the South Island's got three quite distinct markets. The first is across the Alps, which is basically coal, coking coal, not thermal coal, and also dairy, and that's quite a distinct and discrete market through there. So the future of that coal export is very much dependent on the mining licenses that are associated with that and the duration of those licenses, because at some point we'll have to reinvest in the coal fleet itself, and that takes a long time to amortise. So there's a three-way going there between ourselves, Bathurst and Port of Lyttelton to sustain that. The second market in the South Island is the Auckland Christchurch market, that basically domestic, which flows a little bit down through to Dunedin. That stands alone. And then the third is the export market, which is predominantly dairy, but also meat. And you've got the situation that's set up at Mosgiel and other places. So the South Island's is in a good state. Dairy's going gangbusters. It's coming on rail. So the South Island's pretty good for there. With respect to passenger, let's look at it through two lenses. The first is the tourism lens, and both those services are going extremely well. While passenger volumes are slightly down, the yield from passengers is way up. We have introduced a premier product on those trains, effectively equivalent of travelling first class on an airline. That is going extremely well, and people will pay the premium to do that. If we look at commuter rail, there is the proposal from within Christchurch for the Rolleston, for services Rolleston and through to the north. That is something that's in its nascent stages. We'll see how that turns out, and obviously it's been promoted by the local councils, as was done with Te Huia, and we'll obviously give them the support they need to take that through to business case. We've also had the Southerner running on occasions. Now that actually went really well, but you never know whether a one-off is going to translate to something that's the same as day in, day out, and the team will be looking at options for that. Maybe we do turn about with the Coastal Pacific, etc., and that's something which we're exploring. It got a very good pickup, but as I say, whether that translates into a sustainable thing as opposed to an event, hard to know.
That's fine. Just one sub on that for the Minister. Given the return of the Southerner service, is that something as Minister that you would like to see investment directed towards to ensure that connection between Christchurch and Dunedin?
Yes, seriously. Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah. But also, don't overlook the fact that there's a whole lot of employment being re-offered to New Zealanders when the situation looked hopeless, when we were downsizing. It's turned around now. We're building a whole lot of our own equipment ourselves, both in the North and the South Island. I think that's fantastic.
Supplementary.
Thank you. Just on the freight, and thank you for that breakdown on the South Island. It's encouraging. I'm just wondering about the statement of corporate intent for Kiwi-Rail. Will that, I know that's pending, will that reflect a focus on freight and, what's your expectations there?
I simply can't answer that until the statement of corporate intent has been approved by ministers. It's not something I can comment on.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, let's get back to some panellists talking. How's dinner?
It's pretty good, actually.
It's good to hear. And percentage of meat or dairy products, is it still 0?
0, yes.
So what do you think about the fact that they mentioned a bit about the South Island basically is split into 3 factors: coal, dairy, or tourists?
I don't know that's entirely an accurate depiction of the South Island's economy.
No, the rail part of the economy, the rail trip, the what is freighted in the South Island.
Sorry, could you rephrase the question?
So what's been basically said in there, in the South Island,
Yep.
it has been distinguished into 3 categories:
Mhm.
coal,
Mhm.
dairy,
Mhm.
and tourists. As
Yeah.
in what's the 3 biggest customers, the 3 biggest things moved around in the South Island.
That surprises me because I thought logging would also make that list.
I think logging's more of a North Island thing, not a South Island thing.
That is true. I also thought that shipping general goods would also make that list as well.
One of them is meat for export.
Yep.
So under the dairy, which is classed as the export sector, the second most moved product is meat for export.
I mean, I'd have to look at, I don't know off the top of my head the numbers. I'd have to look at the data to see whether or not that's actually an accurate depiction of what is being moved by the trains in the South Island. But yeah, I mean, based by weight alone and what we process here in New Zealand, that sounds about right.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, you wouldn't sit there and send coal by truck, would you now?
No.
That's just ludicrously stupid.
Yeah.
Well, they did have to do it for a little bit for part of the section in the South Island when they had a particular tunnel was closed for 9 months. They had to ship it to Stillwater by road, or move it by road. But then a lot of it just sat there waiting to be explored when the railway line opened as well. Because I know when the railway line opened, it was literally having like multiple coal trains a day going out of there to play catch up.
But yeah, I mean, breaking it down into agriculture products, mined products, and tourism does sound about right for the South Island.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know how specific it is to dairy or coal, but yeah, I mean, making those three general categories does sound about right. Yep.